everyone. This is Jewish Talk coming to you from NASA Community College at 90.3 WHPC. We're also streaming on the iHeart and the iTunes app. This program is heard later at 11 p.m. archived and also on Spreaker.com. So my name is, you got it, it's an R, it's an A, give me a B, give me another B, give me an I. Oh, Rabbi Perl, forget about it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It all depends on when you are listening and watching. And I'm going to say watching because we're on Facebook at WHPC and on Facebook at Untitled Pearl. Hello, everybody online. Hello to everybody on the radio. And, of course, hello to the world. And hello to Michael Zaghi all the way from California. Jonathan Wolf and Linda Zellickson. Good morning and wishing everybody. Let's begin with the bracha. All of us should be inspired and written and inscribed for a very happy and healthy new year. Talking about hello, I'd like to do a big shout out to everybody in the Four Seasons. You know, Long Island has a Four Seasons. It's on Carmen Avenue. And let's say hello to Brian and to Frank and everybody out there. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. And today we have a very tough question to deal with. And that, of course, is why do bad things happen to good people? Why is this world seemingly so unfair? Please, and someone said to me the other day, Rabbi, I know you're going to talk about this on the radio. Don't tell me we can't understand God's ways. I'm sick of hearing that answer. I want an explanation. All right, take it easy. Take it easy. Let's try our best. I'm going to present this in different formats, so some of the stuff that I will be sharing with you may sound somewhat a little bit repetitive, but it's to bring out different aspects as we go through this particular important subject. The first thing I'd like to say is that in response to this question, why do bad things happen to good people, is, are you sure you want an explanation? Do you really want to know why the innocent suffer? Let me tell you something. I think not. We are far better off with the question than with the answer. You are bothered by the fact that people suffer undeservedly. And you should be. Any person with an ounce of moral sensitivity is outraged by the injustices of our world. Let's put it from the biblical perspective. Abraham, considered the first Jewish person, asked God. He wasn't afraid. Should the judge of the whole world not act fairly? Was his question. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Moses, the great Moses. We may be able to change our noses, but never our Moses. And you know what he asked? Why have you treated the people badly? Guess what? He asked that question. Why do bad things happen to good people? And today, we still ask this question. Why, God? Why? But what if we found the answer? What if someone came along and gave us a satisfying explanation? What if the mystery was finally solved? What if we asked why and we actually got an answer? If this ultimate question were answered, then we would be able to make peace with the suffering of innocence. And that is unthinkable. Worse than innocent people suffering is others watching their suffering and being unmoved. And that's exactly what would happen if we were to understand why innocents suffer. We would be no longer bothered by their cry. We would be no longer feeling their pain because we would understand why it's happening. Imagine, let me give you this example. You're in a hospital and you hear a woman screaming with pain. Outside her room, her family is standing around, chatting, all smiling and happy. Gewalt, you scream at them. What's wrong with you? Miss Meshiga, can't you hear how much pain she's in? And they answer, oh, this is a delivery ward. She's having a baby. Of course we're happy. When you have an explanation, pain doesn't seem so bad anymore. We can tolerate suffering when we know why it is happening. And so, if we could make sense of innocent people suffering, if we could rationalize tragedy, then we would start to live with it. We would be able to hear the cry of sweet children in pain and not be horrified. We would tolerate seeing broken hearts and shattered lives, for we would be able to neatly explain them away. Our question would be answered, and we could simply move on. But as long as the pain of innocence remains a burning question, and we're bothered by its existence, and as long as we can't explain pain, we must alleviate it. If innocent people's suffering does not fit into our worldview, we must eradicate it. Rather than justifying their pain, we need to get rid of it. So, that's what I'm saying. Keep asking the question. Keep asking the question. Why do bad things happen to good people? But stop looking for answers. Start formulating a response. Take your righteous anger and turn it into a force for doing good. Redirect your frustrations with injustice and unfairness and channel it into a drive to fight injustice and unfairness. So, in simple words, let your outrage propel all of us into action. When we see innocent people suffering, help them. Combat the pain in the world with goodness. Alleviate suffering wherever you can. So, we don't want answers. We don't want explanations. And we don't want closure. We just want an end to suffering. And we dare not leave it up to God to alleviate suffering. He is waiting for us to do it. That's what we're here for. On Shabbos, we discussed how everything in this world, whatever God says you can't do, there's always a possibility of doing it. There's another side to it. So the question was brought up. God says we mustn't be heretics. So how can we be heretics? Right? Heretics against God? How can you describe being a heretic in a positive sense? And the Baal Shem Tov says, by doing acts of kindness. When you see someone suffering, you don't just say, oh, well, it's God's business. This reason, that reason. Oh, I believe in God. He'll take care of it. No, says the Baal Shem Tov. You want to be a heretic? So to speak, not to believe in God is to go out there. When you see someone who's suffering or in a tight spot, go out and help. Step in there. Be a mensch. So again, it's probably the oldest question in the history of human thought. It's surely the most disturbing, the most frequently asked, and the least satisfactorily answered. And that again is, why do bad things happen to good people? Let me just say hello. I can see wonderful people posting their comments all the way to Miriam. Let's see who else is joining us over here. Wow. Everybody, I tell you, just post your name or a comment on the Facebook, and we'll be happy to address it from time to time. So again, this question everyone asks. It's a philosopher, a theologian, a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker. No one really answers it. Just to think about this, to broaden this question and broaden this subject, the Bible devotes 41 chapters in the book of Job, Eov, on this very subject, offering several interesting explanations only to refute them. The conclusion being that the finite man cannot fathom the ways of God. For most, the protest against evil is something that rises out of one's own encounters with rough spots of life. To a true leader who feels the pain of his people as his own, it is a bottomless cry issuing from the seemingly bottomless well of human suffering. As I mentioned, it didn't take long for Moses to issue such a cry. Shortly after God appeared to him in a burning bush and appointed him the liberator of Israel, of the Jewish people at that time, Moses was back. And he was back to God, and he said, hello, my God, why have you done evil to this people? Right? He was sent to go down to Egypt, take the people out, let my people go. And nevertheless, things got worse and worse and worse. So Moses stepped in and said, hello, come on. Why have you sent me? But since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done worse to his nation. Gavald, you have not saved them. So that's the question. I know Laura May and Eitan Kolshevsky, they constantly ask this question of me. What are you doing, Rabbi? What's your problem? And what does God say? What does God say? He says, hold on just a little longer, and you'll see that it all turns out right at the end. Encouraging words, especially when it comes from God himself. But really, still no answer for the ultimate question. Was it a failing? This is the point, my friends. What is the failing on the part of Moses that he protested God's way of doing things? Now, if you take a cursory reading of the Talmudic and typical Midrashic expositions on this dialogue of Moses with God, it would suggest that it was so. Moses is actually criticized for not measuring up to the unquestioning faith of the patriarchs. By some accounts, he's even punished for his outburst. But there's a fundamental rule in Torah scholarship, and that is the Torah does not speak negatively even of an impure animal, unless there is a positive, constructive lesson to be derived. To what end, we can say and ask ourselves, did the Torah tell us about Moses failing? Some would say that this is to teach us that even a great man like Moses can experience doubt and despair. But I'm here this morning, dear friends, stand by. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, however, takes a different approach. Moses' protest to God, says the Rebbe, was not a breach of faith, but an act of faith of the highest order. Indeed, the question, the protest, the outcry of why have you done evil to your people, or in a more broader sense, why are good people suffering, can issue only from the mouth of a true believer. The non-believer, too, may be outraged by the cruelty and the suffering our world abounds with. But just who is he outraged at, right? He's a non-believer. The blind workings of faith, the oblivious, and the, the oblivious and a personal God of physical law and some evolutionary process, the random arrangement of quarks that make up this universe. So the non-believer, he's angry. Sure, he's angry, but who's he angry with? He doesn't believe in God. Even people who believe in God are not necessarily driven to confront him as Moses did. They may not believe that he is truly responsible for all that transpires in this world. They may not be convinced of his ultimate goodness. I believe in God, but maybe he's in Florida. He doesn't know what's going on in Manhattan. It looks like who knows what's going on over there. They may think that it's pointless to protest to him, since he doesn't really care how they feel about it. Or maybe everything's just fine in their lives, and what happens in the rest of the world just doesn't concern them. The true believer, on the other hand, this is my point, knows that everything that happens only because it is ordained from above. He knows that God is the essence of good, and that only good flows from him. And he also knows that man can talk to God and expect responses to his questions. So he cannot but cry out, "My God, why have you done evil? Why is there so much evil in this world? Why do bad things happen to good people?" This is what we must learn from Moses, says the Rebbe. We must speak to God. We must confront him and ask him, why is there evil and suffering in this world? We do not know enough to comprehend the answer. We must, however, believe and care enough to ask the question. Bad things happen. They happen to good people. Contrary to common perception, bad things also happen to bad people. The difference is not so much in what happens, but in what happens to the person. Let me just repeat that again. The difference is not so much in what happens, but in what happens to the people. When bad things happen to bad people, they're confirmed in their badness. We knew it all along, they say. The world is a bad place. The only way to get anywhere in life is by being badder than all the other baddies. When something bad happens to a good person, it makes him or her a better person. Trust in God is a great virtue. The Talmud and other Jewish sources are full of shining examples of men and women whose faith in God and their trust and in His salvation never wavered, even in the most trying of circumstances. But, said the founder of Hasidism, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, there are times when it is forbidden to trust in God. What are you talking about? Trust in God, says the Baal Shem Tov, is a virtue when applied to one's own life. But to resort to trust in God in matters concerning others and other people's lives is a grave sin. If you hear of a fellow in need and you say, God will provide. If your reaction to your neighbor's difficulties, let God help, that's not being pious. You're simply shirking. A person who thinks that way will be shirking their responsibilities towards their fellow man. The same double standard applies to taking a philosophical view on pain and suffering. To justify another person's suffering, to see something positive and gainful in another's pain, I can't find the right words but to say is simply callous, cruel, and plain wrong. Unless you are a prophet, in which case God has appeared to you and said, go to so-and-so and tell him such and such a thing that happened because of this. Unless you're a prophet, you have no business explaining other people's lives or defending God's way of running the world. He doesn't need your help, I promise you. And that's exactly what a good person does regarding his or own troubles. When something happens to him, fine, a person must say to himself, what did I do wrong? She says, someone is trying to tell me something. What might it be? What can I learn from this? We often mention the Talmud. It says a person doesn't stub their toe in the shower, when they're having a shower, except for kind of a message to them. Check it out. Is your life, are we accomplishing what we should be doing? So what can I learn from this? He says, now I can appreciate the value of health and prosperity. Now I understand what so-and-so was going through. And so, a good person, let me tell you, who lived more than 850 years ago, put it this way. If a person looks at the world and says, this is just how the world runs. This trouble happened to happen, mikra nikra. If a person looks at the world in such a manner, it's an act of cruelty. For it causes a person to persist in his negative ways. Rather, it should serve to rouse the heart and open the pathways to return to God. And you know who said that over 850 years ago? Maimonides himself. So you see, dear friends, whichever way you look at it, it certainly has something very, very important to teach us at how we should look and not accept the world. Keep asking the questions. We don't want the answer. We don't want to rationalize. Once you have a rationalization for someone else's pain or suffering, then we become callous. But we must stand up, ask God the question, keep on asking the question, and ultimately Hashem will rid this world from all these negativities. I now would like to pivot for a moment and share with you that last Wednesday, Rabbi, was the 20th day of the month of Menachem Av. That day is the yahrzeit of the passing of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Schneerson of righteous memory, the father of the Rebbe. He was considered one of the greatest Talmudic and Kabbalistic scholars of his generation. He passed in 1944. He served as the chief rabbi of the city of Dnipropetrovsk in Ukraine. It was during the bloody Bolshevik Revolution and the subsequent communist oppression of that time. And despite the terrible persecutions directed at religious leaders in those days, he remained fearlessly defiant in strengthening Jewish learning and practice in the city and throughout the Soviet Union. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak was eventually arrested, tortured, and subsequently banished to exile in a remote village in Kazakhstan. His spirit, however, was not extinguished, even while his body was broken and eventually gave way to his early passing. His selfless efforts for Jews and Judaism, even in the face of a sadistic superpower regime determined to leave no trace of them, were later tenderly nurtured by his son and disciple, our Rebbe. The Rebbe conducted Soviet Jewry affairs on the QT clandestinely from afar, and eventually saw the decades of his father's efforts blossom into full bloom upon the fall of the Iron Curtain and the public resurgence of Jewish life there. So Soviet Union, however, is not alone in the debt of gratitude it owes to Rabbi Levi Yitzhak. His personal example demonstrating how Judaism will survive against all odds and how we must adhere steadfastly and proudly to its ideals serves us all as a shining beacon of inspiration to all of us today and for all generations to come. And with this in mind, I'd like to share with you now this very special interview I had concerning this very issue of the Rebbe's father. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special interview. We have with us today Rabbi Tzvi Konikov, Chabad director of Satellite Beach in Florida, who made a worldwide trip to Alma Ata. So welcome, Rabbi Konikov. Please tell us why you would travel all the way to visit the resting place of Rabbi Leivik, the Rebbe's father.
Well, we are Chabad of the Space Coast, and we have many offers to start the first Chabad center in space. So I might as well make a little dry run to go all the way 20 hours to Kazakhstan. But in reality, what was the reason I took this actual trip all the way out to this far distant place? I think in a very short response, I would say that our generation owes it to Reb Leivik, to the Rebbe's father, for being the pioneer to keep Judaism alive when its very existence was threatened. I thought it would be very, very right and just to pay a visit to this man's grave where his own son was not able to be there. I'm sure you know the Rebbe separated from his own father and mother before his own marriage and never saw his father. He never had the chance to be with his father all the way until his passing in 1944. So as shluchim, as emissaries of the Rebbe, my colleague Rabbi Benji Korf and some 200 plus rabbis, emissaries shluchim of the Rebbe, we decided that our Florida Regional Conference, which we usually have during the summer, instead of having it here in a comfortable abode in sunny Florida, why don't we go out and have it over there, right where it all began, during the storms of Soviet Yiddishkeit under the oppression of the Soviets, and have our conference to get our inspiration from the great Reb Leivik.
So, Rabbi, I appreciate this. And so, reflecting now, what message you think we could all come away with of what Rabbi Leivik is? You explained to us his Mesiras Nefesh sacrifice for Judaism at that time. But here, as we're listening and learning from you, what can we take away from your trip, but personally, what you feel could be a message to all of us from this trip to Kazakhstan?
Well, I think that a very simple message is that our ancestors, our great parents, grandparents, previous generations, they went out of their, to say it mildly, they went out of their comfort zone. They had literally sacrificed to keep Yiddishkeit alive, and we came to a comfortable place called America, the United States of America, and it's very easy. It's a beautiful place, beautiful environment. It's very easy to keep our Yiddishkeit, but I think we've forgotten that in order to make something great survive, we do need to still go out of our comfort zone, even when everything's great. So in terms of a little lesson that we can take, at least I'm taking it for myself, is I am going to say to myself from now on, not what could the country do for you, but what could I do for the country? What could I do for Yiddishkeit in terms of going out of my comfort zone? And if you allow me, Rabbi Perl, if I could just share with you one tiny little story which I read from the Rebbe's, Rabbi Leivik's own wife, who wrote this book, Mother in Israel. I encourage all your listeners to read this book. Fascinating book, A Mother in Israel. One of the stories she tells, what was the reason that Rabbi Leivik actually did not accept the position. He was offered a position as the chief rabbi of Yafo off Tel Aviv already in the 1920, 29, 27, 29. He could have left. But this was one of the examples she gave as to why he did not leave. In the middle of the night, close to midnight, he gets a knock on the door, and the secret KGB officer wants to get married with this girl. And they weren't allowed to say anything, but they had no rabbi. There was nobody there to marry them. So they asked Reb Leivik if he could secretly marry them in their home. But Reb Leivik had a little dilemma. He needed a minion. Rabbi Perl, I'm sure I'm here on the Space Coast, and you're out there in your shlichus, in your holy mission. And sometimes it gets a little difficult to get even one Jew to come. You have the 9 Yidden, and people think, there'll be another Yid that will come to the shul. But listen to Reb Leivik. Look what he did. He gathered together 9 people after midnight under the Soviet watch, and he needed now an extra man for a minyan, and they couldn't find one. And who's going to be willing to sacrifice their life in the middle of the night to go join Reb Leivik's illegal activity? So you know what he did? There was a Yid that was in the next building who was actually a KGB officer whose entire job was to watch and record every step of Reb Leivik. Reb Leivik summoned one of the family members to go knock on the guy's door to ask him to join. When the guy saw this chassid standing at the door, and when he heard this question posed to him, he could not believe his ears. He said, "You want me to come to the minyan?" And of course, his neshama woke up, and he walked with this guy to Reb Leivik's home, made sure they shut the window shades, and there, at some 2:00 in the morning, they had a minyan for the wedding. I mean, that brings tears to my eyes, and I think it's not a huge sacrifice that every single Jew listening to this should say to themselves, even if Rabbi Perl or Rabbi Konikov has a minyan, but do it for the sake of Yiddishkeit. Come out of your comfort zone on a Saturday morning or Friday night. Do it for Yiddishkeit, for our nation. We need everybody. We need to be able to show that incredible strength of Am Yisrael Chai. And I think that this is one of the reasons why we need to hear these stories. And that's why I would travel 20 hours to ignite my flame, to ignite another Yid's flame, to say, we're going to go out of our comfort zone and we're going to go to the finish line.
Rabbi, very inspiring. I feel it. I get your message. We all do. We're speaking with Rabbi Chaim Konikov, who's the Chabad director of Satellite Beach in Florida. And for transparency's sake, Rabbi Konikov is my distinguished mechutin. His wonderful, illustrious son, Rabbi Mendel, is married to our daughter Shana. Many of you listening today know our dear daughter, and Mendel, who loves to lead us at our synagogue. I know you also were a very good friend and confidant to Ilan Ramon. Ladies and gentlemen, just remind you who Ilan Ramon was. It was an Israeli fighter pilot and later the first Israeli astronaut for NASA. Ramon was the space shuttle payload specialist of STS-107. That was the fatal mission of Columbia, in which he and 6 other crew members were killed in the re-entry accident. Rabbi Konikov, can you just briefly share with us some of your encounters with Ilan Ramon and, again, inspire us with his life?
So I'm sure many have heard of this great soul, Ilan Ramon, and what he did and what he sacrificed, coming from grandparents who sacrificed their lives during the Holocaust and then going and making Israel what it is today. But I think just a little takeaway that moved me, and this is what I shared at the Kennedy Space Center Memorial a week after the accident. Ilan Ramon came to me with a question: what do I do? I want to keep Shabbat. I want to mark Shabbat in the space shuttle, but we got a little dilemma. Every 90 minutes is another day. Every 10 and a half hours is Shabbat. Every 20 days is Rosh Hashanah. Jerusalem, we have a problem. What do we do here? So I told him I'm not going to answer this on one foot. I gotta do my homework. And I'm not going to get into the technical answer, because we don't need to get technical right here. I think the lesson is tremendous. Imagine Ilan Ramon is going to space with all his experiments and incredible achievements, but what was bothering a Jew, and not necessarily a very religious Jew, but what was bothering him, he wanted to mark Shabbat in space. And I said at the Kennedy Space Center Memorial that what he taught us, what he brought to the world, was that Shabbat, it has an incredible timeless message that every human being needs to pause, no matter how fast your life is going, no matter how important you think your work is to you and to your corporation or to whatever it is. Every Jew, the Torah, Judaism teaches us on Shabbat, we need to pause and think about, why are you here on earth? And take that with you to your neshama, to deep to your core, and say, I'm going to take a little bit out of my day, every day, it could be 1 minute, and put on tefillin, do a mitzvah, think about somebody, another Jew or another human being that might need a little lift, and bring that inspiration, that incredible, powerful, soulful inspiration to the world. The world needs it. The world is going through a very dark time. We need Mashiach, but we need the courage of Reb Leivik, and maybe it takes a good long trip to Kazakhstan. And I might feel like, as Yiddish, there's an expression, an Eisgeklappter Hishana. But it was all worth it, just to get that inspiration, to go into his grave and to shed a few tears and say, you know what, I may be comfortable in America, but I got to give my whole to make sure the Yiddishkeit remains strong as ever. And even though 78 years ago people had that powerful sacrifice, we need to bring a little bit of a powerful response today to the trials and tribulations of what Yiddishkeit is going through now. And it should only be a small little pause before we see that great light again. And we'll march to Yerushalayim.
Amen. Rabbi, I want to thank you for taking time out. Really, I know that you've just concluded a 20-hour round trip all the way out to Kazakhstan, to Alma-Ata. And, I was thinking, as you were sharing with us your beautiful, eloquent words, how people, organizations, they take their annual conferences, they go to the Javits Center, they go to some destination in the Bahamas, and you all, over 200 shluchim, rather than sitting around in Miami, which is a great place to be, there's plenty of nice hotels to get together, you took the effort, the expense, to travel all the way to the resting place of the Rebbe's father to be inspired. But more importantly, you've inspired us today, and we wish you and your mishpacha and your shlichus and your mission out in Satellite Beach to continue to go from strength to strength, and all of us will be together, every one of us, with the coming of Mashiach.
Amen. Thank you so much, and only good news in the future.
Amen. I have all the best to you. Thank you so much to Rabbi Konikov for sharing that with us, and really, dear friends, I was very inspired with the opportunity to be able to talk to him, and he took time out, just got off the plane, and he was so generous with his time to inspire us. And I want to say thank you so much again, and welcome to Karen Cohen Green, to Laura May, and to Levana Lichter, and everybody listening out there in the worldwide world of the internet and the radio and WHPC, and to everybody out there, how we can spend time here this morning talking about important issues of life and hear about people who lived and led and under the most trying of circumstances and making a difference in this world. Moving on, we'll perhaps go back to this for a moment, but first I'd like to address an interesting question that if yesterday in the synagogue we read the portion of Akev, and there we have a reference once, twice, that Israel, and we all know, well known by many, that Israel is a land that's described as being flowing with milk and honey. So our question today is, why is those terms used? And I'd like to give you an interesting perspective that I recently learned on particularly why the land of Israel is considered a land flowing with honey. Milk, we'll keep it for another time. Well, let me put it in the following manner. Before hitting the ground running, small business owners carefully consider how they're going to structure their legal corporation. A very common setup is what's called a pass-through entity. That's a legal business entity that passes any income it makes straight to the owners and shareholders or the investors. As a result, only these individuals and not the entity itself are taxed on the revenues. Pass-through entities are commonly used to avoid double taxation, which happens with income from regular corporations such as a C corporation. You didn't think I knew about this kind of stuff. This type of entity has a long history in the United States and is on the rise. According to one report, in the early 1980s, almost all business income in the United States was generated by C corporations. But by 2014, of the 26 million businesses in the United States, 95% were pass-throughs, while only 5% were C corporations. You say, Rabbi, this is what I got up in the morning, on Sunday morning, I have enough with the corporations and the taxes all week. I came to talk to you. I want to hear something about Torah. Well, my friends, this isn't a lesson about tax codes. But running a pass-through entity isn't limited to businesses. We would do well to apply it to life itself. As I mentioned, Parshas Akev, the portion that we read, is replete with descriptions of the land of Israel. As Moses tells the Jewish people they're about to enter a very precious land with many beautiful qualities, and including this famous depiction, the land that God promised to our forefathers is a land flowing with milk and honey. What's the significance of these two particular items? Everything in the Torah is precise. So if two specific items are linked to the uniqueness of the land, there has to be some deeper message that they convey to us. We'll leave the milk for another time. And I'm going to concentrate right now on the significance of honey. The land of Israel is flowing with honey. Turns out that there's a lot that we can learn from bees and how they go about making honey. For starters, a bee's primary function is to pollinate flowers, collect nectar, and make honey. From flower to flower, honeybees are critical to making the world go around. The other things honeybees are famous for is their stinger. Just ask any kid in the park as they run in terror from the buzzing bee. But once the kid has calmed down, the first thing parents tell their children is the comforting fact that bees are largely harmless, for they only use their stingers in self-defense. Unless they feel threatened, they will not strike first. Just stand still, mind your own business, and the chances are you will be fine. Fine. In other words, the bee is really only concerned with making honey and will only use its stinger when something gets in the way of that goal. Like the bee who buzzes around and collects nectar, we, too, are tasked with moseying about, and collecting sweet things. Whether it's a personal odyssey or a literal geographic journey, God sent us into this world with a mission, a spiritual mission. Our job is to fly around, collect the materials of our life, and make them into something holy and sweet. Ouch, that was just a bee. But sometimes things get in the way. Whether it's a friend mocking you for trying to become a little bit more involved in Shabbos, or it could be an internal struggle with not speaking negatively about others. It's bound to happen. And like a bee, that's when you need to bring out your stinger. What do I mean? Something getting in the way of your mission, it's time to act in self-defense. When necessary, we must proactively fight negativity, banish opposition, and deal with darkness. Firmly give that neighbor, let's say, tell them a piece of your mind. Like, stay away. I'm trying to become more involved in my Jewish life, in my observance. Don't make fun of me. And grapple with that irresistible desire for some juicy gossip. But like the bee, we only use the stinger when we absolutely have to. Otherwise, the only thing we should be concerned with is positivity, making honey. Making honey. But how? How do we keep ourselves so hyper-focused on exclusively positive action? Like the bee. Once again, the bee has the answer. The Talmud points out the uniqueness of honey. That is, though it's secreted from a non-kosher animal, I believe Dr. Kilshevsky, we had the conversation about this, because the animal itself, nobody sits and eats bees. So it is a secretion from a non-kosher animal, and yet the honey is still kosher. This is in stark contrast to the rule that all secretions from non-kosher entities are also non-kosher. So how come honey is allowed if it comes from a non-kosher the bee? And the Talmud explains that honey isn't really a secretion from the bee's body, as the body is just a pass-through entity, like I mentioned earlier on. As such, the honey retains its botanical quality and is fit for kosher consumptions. Here lies the simple solution to maintaining a positive attitude throughout the holy journey of life. Remember that we're merely a pass-through entity. God has injected a soul into our bodies and tasked it with a holy mission, and you're just hosting it for years that we live on this world. In other words, it's not about you. It's about the mission for which we are a host. Imagine a high-level CEO calling off a multi-billion-dollar deal because the other negotiating partner insulted him about the tie he was wearing. Would that not be petty? Are you seriously going to forgo billions of dollars because someone said your tie was ridiculous? It's not about you right now. It's about the company. It's about the deal. It's about the potential profits. Well, we too are on a mission with more than billions of dollars at stake. The entirety of creation rests on every one of our shoulders. I often tell my wonderful congregation, the people I interact with, none of us are private individuals. Every one of us in the street, in the home, wherever we go, are carrying a mission that has an impact on every single person in this world. The entirety of creation rests on our shoulders as we go about introducing light to the dark corners of this world. So we don't get caught up with offensive remarks, personal challenges, or other kinds of pettiness. Remember, we are a pass-through entity, and that's exactly what makes a person pretty much invincible. That's why the land of Israel is a land that that it flows with honey, because the purpose of Israel and the holiness of the land is to bring holiness and sweetness, and to show the world what it means to live in peace, and to aspire for greater things in life. On Shabbos, I take a little moment here. This is in honor of Michael Soshnik, who loves to come to our Sunday morning, a Shabbos morning class, and we often break out in song. And this past week we were discussing the significance of a mezuzah, and how a mezuzah, even independently of it being standing up on the doorway, has the power. It's basically the feature of a mezuzah is protection. So I broke out into song, and I'm going to do that right here for everyone's benefit. I have a mezuzah, I have a mezuzah on my door, and now I will tell you, what it's for, to kiss the mezuzah, is my aim, is my aim, for on it is written, for on it is written, Hashem's name, Hashem's name. So there you are, dear friends. Now you know, you heard up front, why I am not the cantor in my synagogue. After such a rendition, you can understand why I was never hired to be a chazan. So let's continue on here. I just want to remind everyone that this coming next Saturday and Sunday marks the beginning of the month of Elul. It's the last month before the high holidays. As we often joke, there's just so many shopping days left now to Rosh Hashanah. And I'd like to welcome everyone listening, wherever you may be. Please know, do not worry if you do not have a synagogue. You are welcome at ours. We do not take tickets at the door. We have security for obvious reasons, but everyone is welcome. Men and women are welcome to join us. And if you'd like to have the schedule, shoot us an email at rabbiperl@chabadminiola.com or just call us at 516-739-3636. We're more than happy to welcome you for our great high holiday celebrations. But it's important to note that the coming month, the last month of the Jewish year, called Elul, E-L-U-L, is a very powerful month. It has two sides to it, kind of a paradox. On the one side, it is a month of reckoning, of reflection of what's happened in the past year. And at the same time, it's also an appropriate preparation for the coming year. So we are to be reminded that take the opportunity, take it seriously. We should all take it very seriously in the month of Elul to prepare ourselves to reflect properly and prepare ourselves for a very happy, healthy, and sweet new year. And to also remind ourselves, thinking in mind in terms of a bee, a busy bee. We're all busy bees in so many different ways. And it's important to appreciate that we've all been given the power of creativity. Every person has their talent. Everybody has been blessed with a particular opportunity in different places, different locales, or different professions, whatever it may be. And we should never, ever, give up, so to speak, on how we can make this world so special. And I want to say hello to Dr. Gardin, who has joined us here today. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I want to just reiterate an interesting conversation that we had. Do you know, in the Jewish tradition, what's the first thing we do when the Sabbath ends? We don't just walk out and that's it. We actually have a Havdalah service. We take a cup of wine, we take some spices, and we say some special words, and we also light a Havdalah candle. It's made up of at least two wicks, and a special blessing is made over the light. Now, why is it? Why is it that in the Jewish tradition, the first thing we would do on Saturday night is start lighting up? I'm not talking about a joint. I'm talking about lighting a Havdalah candle. Why would that be? So interestingly, we drink wine, we use spices called psamim, and we look at a lit Havdalah candle. If you think about this, wine is drunk. You drink the wine in your mouth. That's what most normal people do. They pour wine into their mouth, so the mouth. Then we sniff the psamim, the spices, with the nose. So you go from the mouth to the nose. And then you look at the fire on the Havdalah candle with your eyes. And then there's a blessing that speaks about the power of the intellect and the ability to look at the world and see boundaries, day and night, between the Shabbos and the weekdays. So you see the opening hour, the opening moments of the new week. There's an emphasis on going from strength to strength. Simply put, you go from the mouth to the nose, to the eyes, to the brains. A person sets the foundation. The generating power of the new week starts with Havdalah. It doesn't start with the pizza. It starts with the Havdalah. And the question also is, why is it that we start with why do we have fire? What do we have to do fire with? And I shared with our wonderful congregation on Shabbos that the first time that Adam and Eve experienced darkness after being created on the Friday, which, by the way, has become the Jewish New Year. Interesting, our Jewish New Year is very universal. It's not the beginning of the Jewish religion. That began at Mount Sinai. The Jewish New Year is the beginning of the world, of every single human being. So there's a very important universalistic openness about the importance of Rosh Hashanah that has an impact on the entire world, because all of us have come from Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve, they did the sin. They were allowed to remain in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. And then, of course, they were banished on Saturday night. But something new entered into their life. Their first time experiencing darkness was Saturday night. Because from the time they were created, late afternoon on Friday, there was complete 36 hours of light. That's why on Hanukkah, the holiday of light, we light 36 candles besides the shamishes. So they were faced with darkness. What are you supposed to do? So the Medrash tells us that God gave them the ability to recognize that if they took two stones together and rubbed them very quickly, they could find a spark. So they discovered the power of fire on Saturday night. So not only this was just simply, something to do and how to overcome the darkness, but more importantly, it shows the power of creativity. God isn't jealous of mankind who is able to go through science, through technology, and through looking the world, in the medical world, in so many different ways, to discover the greatness in this world, with AI, artificial intelligence, and the advancement in medicine, and so many things. One could never sit back and say, well, that's the way it was. No. We start the new week by saying, I'm going to live a week where it's going to be, by the time next Friday night comes around, I'm going to be inspired. My whole week will go from strength to strength, from my mouth to my nose to my eyes to my brains. And also, everything I touch, I want to find the fire, the spark of holiness, the spark in another human being, the spark in accomplishments and creativity. We are partners with Hashem. We are partners in this world. God made a world, but He left a lot of things unfinished, so to speak, unfinished business. He put mankind on this world to make a difference in this world. So at the end of the day, if a person was to make let's call it a litmus test of a successful life, a successful life is not how many things we have and how many acres we live on or how many cars we have in the garage. Is what we do with all of that. If we use it properly and help people and uplift life and go around pollinating the world, so to speak, with honey and bringing kindness and goodness to everybody around us, that's called a life that's worth living. So during this period, as we go into a more of a meditative and more serious time of the year before Rosh Hashanah, let us take good opportunity, take a good advantage of the blessings that come with the month of Elul. Elul, the Hebrew month, also the Hebrew letters stand for Ani Ladodi Vidodi Li. I am to my beloved is to me. At a wedding that I officiated this past week, it was written right there on the special bag that the chassan, the groom, gave to his bride. I am to my beloved is to me. At this time of the year, it reminds us of the amazing relationship we have with each other, with Hashem, with the people around us, to bring light and holiness and sweetness, and not to accept or find rational reasons why this one is suffering or that one is suffering or why, but to ask Hashem like Moses did, please send us Mashiach, get rid of all the evil, no more illness, no more sadness, but a world filled with absolute opulent happiness, both physically and spiritually. This is your host, Rabbi Perl. Thank you so much to everybody out there. Have a wonderful, good, safe week.